why is it that they really have this focus and obsession on purification or clearing? So many groups and cults are so obsessed with this.
Because they keep you in a state of always striving. You can live a long time being fed off the possibility of what's going to happen in the future when you're bypassing every single day of the now and the present. Welcome to the Dirty Mind Podcast.
That's dirty. That's dirty.
Did you leave me a message and you were like, nobody listens?
Nobody listens. My kids
Right?
and my dogs.
I
That's
know.
everyone.
And so
That's everyone in my life right now.
No, it made me so happy to hear, not because nobody was listening to you. I wasn't happy about that, but it made me so happy because I thought about this for so long. And because I think that every mom, I can't speak for the dads out there, but I can tell you, like, every mom goes through this, like, I don't know. I think we all do, where we just, like, they have selective hearing and you have all these good ideas and they just won't listen to them. And I had to, I have to dissect everything, but I had to dissect this for a while, like nobody listening, because I started noticing, like, I was trying to observe myself instead of going into the reaction of people not listening. I was like really trying to like watch myself. And I was like observing myself and noticing that every time I said that to my kids, I sounded like a little girl. It was really creepy. Talk about haunting. It was like, I would be like, no one's listening. And I would say that like to myself. Like I was like saying it to myself, like, no one's listening. And then I was like, I think I'm like, there's something about it. I just wanted to bring it up to you because when you said that, and then I was like, all right, I have to go deep into it because I always have to go deep into it. But like, what is the dirty mind of a mom that we just like have to do everything, but no one has to pay attention to us? It's honestly like my worst nightmare.
Well, you said that you have really good ideas. I mean, my really good ideas is like, eat your breakfast, get your teeth brushed, put your shoes on, and go get on the school bus. These are the good ideas I have, but it's literally like, here's what gets me. It's the same thing every single day. Every morning, it's the same 5 things. And every night, it's the 2 times they drive me crazy. The morning routine and the get to bed routine. They suddenly go deaf. And then also the dogs, I put them outside and it's like, they hear you and you're like, because my dog, Lulu's pretty good, but Huggy just fucking ignores me. And I'm like, Huggy, and he's just like,
did somebody say something?
And then I'm like yelling Huggy, which is like the stupidest thing to yell in an angry voice.
Oh, so funny. What is it about, okay, kids and dogs, what is it about the kids that it's like, I know they do it on purpose. There's something that they know they can push this button and it makes us, no, I'm serious. Like, we got to figure them out because they're dirtying it up here and it's messing with me. It's messing with me.
So they started doing this thing where it's like optional to do what I say and or delay it by like 5 other things they want to do first. So it's like, they're like, yeah, okay, I'll do that. And they're like, I'm just going to do this first, which could be like,
oh my gosh, no, because do you see what that is? It's just a power struggle. That's what my kids did all the time and they still do. And they're older. It's a power struggle to be like, I'll do it because I know you're the boss, but I'm going to do my thing first.
That's what it is, a total power struggle. And I am losing.
It is. I know. Listen, I think we need to revisit this because I bet you there's so many people that are like, damn straight, we're all in it together. And we need to figure them out, you guys. We all can figure them out if it takes all of us. And I want to talk shit on my dog because now that you were talking shit on yours, because listen, I just want to say I am here during the day. I am outside. I am running. I am like loving on him. I feed him in the morning with a spoon to like get him to his food. Like everybody makes fun of me. I'm just like, no, like I have like real dirty head issues around this. Okay. I like do all these things. And then here's the deal. My kids walk in, okay, 14 and 12 years old. And they're like, hey, Zion. And he's just lick, kiss, 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 kiss. I actually, every single time I go to kiss him, he full on every time completely turns his cheek, turns his whole thing. He will not kiss me, but I do like everything for him. Do you see what I'm saying? It's worse than a power struggle. It's like a really abusive relationship.
He's gaslighting you.
And not even anymore. Now he's just like, are you even like, what, you would even try to?
He's just neglecting you. He's just neglecting you now.
He's just like, no, you have to do that. And that's the way my kids feel. You have to be the mom, right? They're like, I want, we're going to figure it out. This is, put a bookmark in that. I wanted to bring that up because as soon as you said no one's listening, I went, oh, I just need to talk about that. I need to talk about that.
I think I'm going to just stop making them do stuff and let them go to school with no shoes and no lunch and whatever. And just.
Yeah. Yes. That's the thing is that we have to just stop and be like, they have to have the consequence of not listening to you. But we get so worried about giving them the consequence or like, is it too harsh to do something like that? Do you know what I mean? Like we're like, no, I want them to be comfortable. And the kids are like, no, they'll, she'll do all of it. But we really should let them have the consequences of like, if you don't listen, you don't have shoes and then you can't do anything.
Well, my friend dropped her kid off he's supposed to get his shoes and get in the car and she didn't double check and her school is like 30 minutes away. She drives all the way to the school, gets out, the kid doesn't have any shoes on. And so she's like, so she's like, well, it's going to cost me more in gas to go back and get the shoes. So she just went to like Kmart and bought him a new pair of shoes. He loves the new shoes, the Minecraft shoes. He's like, probably like part of his evil plan is to get his mom to just buy him new shoes. But I'm like, she should have just left him there with no shoes. I mean, I don't know if they would let him stay, but like, this is how they get us.
Yes. Yeah. They know we're going to be like, this is the problem with being dedicated parents. This is the issue.
No.
Okay. But on a serious note, can we talk about,
don't say Lori
unfortunately not. I was just going to say, I want you to hear my segue. Why did you have to do that?
Sorry.
Why did you have to jump in? All I wanted to say was, speaking of non-dedicated parents,
non-dedicated. This is what we're calling.
Oh, I was going to call it no one's listening.
No, maybe they didn't listen to her and that's what happened.
Okay, listen, I just want to tell you about something I found this week. Okay. And everyone needs to know about it. I found this channel called the Behavior Channel. It's like the Behavior Panel. It's a panel, it's something like the Behaviorist Panel. These 4 men, I could use a little more diversity. Okay. If they could change up the panel a little bit, but they're 4 like experts in, it's not just body language, but like it's like a whole bunch of psychological things and like, forensic cases that they go into and look at. And I found them and oh my gosh, I went down the rabbit hole and it was so incredibly interesting because like to go into her mind and the way that they explained it. And they really did say, obviously they can't diagnose people, but what they were doing was going through or watching her interview for after her 4th husband was killed by her brother, which is allegedly. True now. We know. Nope. Well, it is allegedly, but no, I'm sorry, but I'm following the entire trial minute by minute. And it was him. And he did kill him anyway. And they did consider it a homicide, but it was, at that time, it was like an accidental homicide. Now he is deceased, the brother. Anyway, y'all don't need to know all of that. But what I'm saying is they did the interview for her when she went in after. Okay. And you have to understand in this person, they're saying that, they can't diagnose her, but they said she is just really psychopathic. I mean, and there's a lot of mental illness there, like that is not maybe just psychopath, but she exhibits some really interesting traits. And what I found was so interesting was that these 4 guys were doing this interview and they're talking about how in this moment, it's like, she doesn't always have her story straight. She's got her 16-year-old who is also being watched in another room and talked to, and her brother, and they don't have exactly everything. Like you don't consider all the things that cops are going to ask and whatever. So in the beginning, she's doing this. The way she's connecting with the, interrogator or who's the person, the interviewer. And she's doing this unbelievable, like way of just dismissing all the stuff. But then you can see her concaving. She's like holding her stomach in and like the way she's protecting herself because she feels insecure. And then they talk about this genius move by the interviewer, right? Because obviously these people are meant to be, this is my new favorite job now. And this is what I aspire to be. Okay. The people who are doing this job are like, it's like she's interviewing Lori Vallow after that happened, but she also has these psychological tactics to get people to talk or ask questions to seem dumb or seem whatever. So she asks this question which I thought was just like a bad question, or that girl was looking weak, but I didn't realize that she had an intention behind it. So she said, I know this is going to sound silly, and like, I feel silly even asking you. Like, she gave away her power. What I didn't realize is that she did that on purpose, right? To see Lori's reaction. So what she was saying was, I know it's going to seem silly, but if you could just like, is there anything that you want to ask me or tell me or like, whatever. But what she did was on purpose show herself as like weakened and like, I know it's silly, and explained herself away. And in that moment, Lori Vallow, because of how extreme queen of manipulation she is, and because she is so genius in she is queen filthy mind, okay? This girl, her head is dirtied up. And because she could see in that moment, I pulled it on you, you bought it, and now you are showing your insecurity around me, because she got this like self-esteem thing where she just pushes herself up on both sides of the chair, like pushes herself up and goes into this like cross leg, took her shoes off and like pulled her feet in and just like grabbed her like her feet and her little shins. It just was so interesting because all of a sudden she went into this full on confident, get comfortable, and like, I own it now, and went into this full blown, like, it would have been a study in like multiple personalities. You know what I mean? With it, but being maybe more conscious. It was like so incredibly calculating, and like the way that they were being able to interpret the face, what they'll do is they'll explain a part and they stop and explain a part, and they'll show while they're explaining it the same face movement or same body movement over and over and over, so that you can understand, which I'm sure they do in school. If you're doing this in criminology, if you're learning about this kind of forensic psychology, you'd probably have to watch people who were, convicted, and understand what would a psychopath, how would they react? What would a narcissist say in this situation? What are some ways that you, as the interviewer, can make yourself dumb down and insecure and say, I know it's going to seem really, I feel so silly asking you. All of a sudden, that girl gave away her power. That woman gave away her power on purpose to see how she would react. I was mad because I was saying to myself, why is this woman saying, oh, I hate to even ask you. I was like, why is she doing that? Like, but then I was like, oh, it's a tactic used by a really smart woman to see what this woman will do, what she will do.
So like a lion with the prey, she pounced on that victim in the moment.
She pounced on it. Her arms in the beginning, they kept saying, look how low she is to the ground. She was holding her stomach in, and like, she didn't feel safe. She didn't know whose story was what. She, the person leaves the room. She's quiet. She doesn't know what's happening. She has to keep the face on, and she can do it. But narcissists don't like to be backed into a corner because they don't have anywhere to go, and they can't like fight back in a police station. So it's just really interesting. Am I the only one, or is that like so interesting?
I think that we are definitely nerds and geek out on this stuff, but
like, isn't it interesting to see the ways, like, to look at how people are lying, or that they have venom towards, or that they feel like they're in the top 5% of like their upper class. Like, there's no, we should edit all this out though.
It's the Dirty Mind podcast. This is what we're doing here, like understanding why people do what they do and what's going on in there. And I think the body language is such an interesting aspect of like tapping into the dirty mind, so you can see how it comes out in her posture and her demeanor and everything as she's calculating.
She knows, and when she knows, like, lets it click that I've won. I won that, and now I made it through. She like knew she had this woman, and then went into this, just really started just going in and saying like that she just started saying more shit talky stuff about her ex-husband who had just died. And well, actually it wasn't her ex-husband, it was her husband at the time. So so that was interesting. And speaking of not perfect,
another segue.
We want to talk about like, I want you to bring up this topic today that we were going to dive into a little bit.
Purification.
Yep.
Okay, I've been dying to talk to you about this since I listened to the Trust Me podcast. They were talking about purification because I had never thought about it like this. But so let me lay the groundwork, and then I want to hear, because you have studied a lot more of the religious groups and cults
Mhm.
than I have, and I imagine that this came from them. But so so in Scientology they talk about going clear, right?
Yes.
In
Yes.
the group that we were in, we did clearings. We did clear, like
Yes.
we would be clearing things all the time. Like that was the obsession, was like, so if something was, let's do an example. So my kids were a pain in the ass to get on the school bus this morning, and that brought up stuff for me. So what I would do, if you were my
Right.
facilitator, you would say, everything that brought up for you, would you destroy and uncreate it? And then we would clear it. So we're
Right.
clearing all of the thoughts, feelings, emotions, all the energy that we have around a thing that has happened or around whatever. So we're always clearing is like the point. So and I guess tell me, in Scientology, was it the same? Or and then NXIVM they did EMs, which was like the same.
EMs, and then they did, so Scientology it's like going clear. Like
Mhm.
you've achieved the state of clear.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they called it clearings, but it was definitely something clear. And I'm trying to think, it's really interesting because there's a bunch of other ones and maybe we'll come up with them. But let me ask you this, like, just so I can throw it in before I forget. Did you ever really feel, and honestly, like, I would like to know, like, did you ever really feel like you cleared something? Like after stuff was clear, was there just like, did you feel like you did clear stuff and that we would just hit new levels? It just felt like I haven't been in a lot longer than you have. And I don't remember ever really feeling like I conquered clearing something. It
So
just
it's
felt like there was more and
interesting.
more all the time that I noticed all the more and more stuff I needed to clear.
So it's interesting because, of course, at the time, it feels like it's doing something. Coming out
Okay.
of it 12 years later, I went to see a psychotherapist last week, and she asked me a question about my brother dying, which was 20 some years ago, right? And meanwhile,
Hmm.
I've been doing these clearings for 12 years. Just talking about it made me very emotional still. And she said something like, "Oh, you haven't you haven't forgiven yourself for this, or do you blame yourself for that?" And I was like, "Yeah." And I think if it was going to work, wouldn't 12 years be enough time? Like, I mean, and I was dedicated. So I wonder what it was doing actually, because there is still really
Hmm.
intense stuff that I thought that I had moved past or whatever. Um, so I'm wondering if
I
it,
actually don't think that they address it. I actually don't think, just to, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I was just thinking that they don't, as far as I'm concerned, they don't really actually clear it. What they're doing is clouding it with like dissociative coping mechanisms. It's almost like they teach you another way to float away from it so that you don't heal it, but it is gone temporarily in your mind because something else is replaced there. So it is kind of, that pain is gone because you can see your brother as like a humanoid or somebody different who, had that you can make a different narrative.
Mhm.
And and then you can also, if you're not buying your own narrative, the new one that they can give you, your they're teaching you skills on how to detach from reality and detach from your body. So it does feel like you are far away from it. So I bet it does feel like you cleared it because it's not there. But the truth is, once you come back and you hit that core again of it, you have the reactions like you had because it's not gone.
So I think, yeah, and it's spiritual bypass. So they're actually giving you a
Yes.
way to spiritually
Yes.
go to like transcend the thing. But here's the thing
Yes.
the reason why it really pinged me with this other podcast I was listening to is because they said they're actually, like, the goal that they have for you to clear something is antithetical to the human state. Like, you actually cannot be void of
Right.
things like, guilt or shame or emotions, because as a human being, that's what makes us human. And to try
And
and have, it's an unattainable goal, right?
it is also why you're not a psychopath. If
Exactly.
you feel guilt and shame, you're not a narcissist, you're not like a person who doesn't feel things. We're supposed to feel things.
And also, like they were talking about in religion, how, you know, you have this fear of going to hell. And so you're supposed to purify yourself of all sin to avoid going to
Yes.
hell. And so it's like same, but different. They're clearing you. They're absolving you of sin. They're, you know, you're purifying yourself in religion, and like in these spiritual or metaphysical or self-help groups, it's like you're doing this other level of clearing of,
Mm-hmm.
you know, things like thoughts and things like
Mm-hmm.
emotions. And I just, the whole concept, it just hit me like,
Mm-hmm.
wow. Oh, also being dirty, speaking of dirty mind, do you remember in this group we were in, we have this facilitator training, right? So you can go up the ranks and then you can become like one of the people that does the classes. They call them facilitators. And on like day 2 or 3, every single time in the morning, they do this whole spiel about cleaning yourself. And they would say, girls, you need to wash your vaginas. Do you remember this?
I mean, I feel like you might be putting me in a traumatic moment. I'm being funny.
Trigger
No,
warning.
I think it's so funny because there's like a vague remembrance now that you're saying something like this, but it feels so far away that I actually can't. I'm like, did I block that out? I have this vague recollection. So explain more. I
Okay, so
can't.
it might have started after you left too, but you'll remember some of this. So they would do a whole hygiene morning, and they would make it like, okay, if you're a facilitator, you need to make sure you wear deodorant and make sure you wear clean clothes. I mean, fair enough, but like, why are these people like teenagers that need to
Oh,
be
and I'm
told to?
sorry. They're like these people who are part of your thing are like the consciousness leaders of the world. But like, let me teach you how to put on deodorant, like my 12-year-old. You know.
That's part of like literally every single training. There's a whole morning dedicated to hygiene. But they would always tell the girls to wash their vaginas, and they would talk about, and I just remember, and maybe it got worse every time because they also thought it was funny and whatever, but they always did it. And in fact, if someone missed that part of the morning, they would do it again the next day just for that one person. I'm like, why are we having another vagina washing conversation? But then, so we would leave that morning and go to lunch, and all of us would be so paranoid. We would be like, we literally would have these conversations. Hey, hey Lisa, like, can you smell me? Like, make sure I don't smell. Cause then they would tell you like, you go nose blind, you won't be able to smell yourself. So make sure you like brush your teeth and like do all this stuff. And so we'd be like, can you smell my breath? Can you please let me know if like any part of my body smells? And we're all paranoid that like our crotches are, I don't know. Like it was just so,
Yeah.
so
Oh my gosh. And it's crazy when you think about it.
and after I left, I was like, oh my God, this was very misogynistic, actually, to be putting in all these women's heads that they are like their vaginas are dirty and they need to go wash them.
Yeah. And also like the thing that always gets me is like, how do we get our heads in a dirty enough place that we're like, this is the person who's telling me what I should be doing, and I feel worried if I'm not doing what he's telling me to do with my vagina?
Yeah. Well, and they would actually pin like they would. So one time I watched him, this was a guy, but the leader was watching one of the facilitators during lunch do a class on stage. Like he had come in from lunch early. So he was watching him. And he was wearing like a cute outfit, like a little kind of cap, not a ball cap. Like he was dressed nicely, but casual. And he did look good. Like it wasn't slumming it. But anyway, he got off the stage and he tore him to shreds over his outfit. And he was like, if you ever dress like this again, I'm revoking your license. Like you will not be able to do classes again. And he was like, I thought I looked cute. And he was just like, no. He's like, you look stupid. You look like a kid. You look dumb. Like no one's gonna try. Like he just tore him up. And I watched that whole conversation. It's not about being dirty, but one of the things in Stephen Hassan's bite model is behavior control. This is behavior
Mm-hmm.
control. So telling
Mm-hmm.
someone how to dress, telling
Yeah.
someone to bathe or not, like, so, and I get
Oh,
like
and
this.
also the other thing is, besides just behavior control and telling people how to dress, it's also that at any point, this is why all of you guys get so paranoid, is because at any point he could just, I don't like this. And if you ever do this again, and then you're like, it's the shock of out of nowhere. You didn't see it because it's insane, but he sees it. And how did I not see it? So then you get paranoid. I have to do right. I have to do right. I have to do right. Do you see the nervous system that you're put in, that like, then you're weaker to them anyway? Then they have more power over you because you're allowing this bullshit to happen.
Well, they put you on the back foot because you're like not quite sure what you did wrong, but you
Right.
definitely don't want that to happen again. And the threat, because that is your
Right.
livelihood that's your business, right? So he's threatening your livelihood as well as your social status within the group because he would be kicking you out of, your tribe, which is like the
And
number one
yes,
trauma of any
yeah,
person can face. And so you don't want that to happen again, but you weren't quite sure what you did to cause it. And so and it's the same thing with us going around like, can you smell me? Because I'm worried. It's like you just have this fear, this paranoia that like maybe you're the one that they were talking about that smelled and you didn't know that you were stinky. And like, so you better just like extra shower, extra, dress better than you normally would think. And it just makes you a little bit insane. So, but here's the whole point is like, they're grooming you or conditioning you to try and achieve this status of purity, right?
mm-hmm,
Not
mm-hmm,
attainable for a human being on the planet.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And so you can't ever get there.
Well, the concept isn't true anyway. What does purification mean? Like that you're not like a living, breathing, like, I mean, look, I know I'm always gross and I have to like take it too far, but like our bodies will secrete things and our bodies will sweat and we have like saliva, like even the concept of being, because they were using in the podcast that we listened to, they were using the word like perfection with purity, right? And it's like us trying to do like be the perfect person and be as pure as possible, but then also you're supposed to be just like sexual enough, or then you're supposed to be a clean good girl, and then you're supposed to physically be this. It's a way to make you paranoid about yourself. Perfection, completely purifying, it's not going to work. It would never work. And it's just like I said before about these groups, they're not made to make you succeed. They're made to break you down. They're made to break you down. So that's what they do. They put those tactics in of like all that behavior control, and then also the output of like, you could get yelled at any time, you could be called out at any time. And before you know it, you're not even questioning, you're not even using your critical mind to think, why is this old man have any conversation with me, this inappropriate conversation about what we should be doing, humiliating us in front of each other? And why is this the person I'm supposed to listen to about it? Do you know what I mean? But we don't ask those questions because we're in a state that another time, I think that what would be really great if people are interested, we both have brothers who have struggled with mental illness and do still struggle with mental illness. We have stories about them, but also when you go through, life's trials, which every single person does, then you are just more vulnerable to this kind of a situation. So when I'm making fun of us for like not understanding, like, how are we not asking this guy? How are we not seeing this as misogynistic? It's like, there's pain in us, or there's vulnerability in us. And this is how we are so easily vacuumed in. It is not even any work for those people who are up at the top. And it is just like, there's no resistance that we can really have. We just have to know the signs to be able to get out. So I have no real frustration and anger. I do have an understanding of how we believe things like that. But I also am just in my mind, wanting to express like now my mindset of looking at it going, how do they not see, what we're letting this guy say? Okay, so a few things about the purity thing that I want to talk to you about, because we brought up a few things about it, but we talked about it, like it being also this like standard of perfection of like wanting to be perfect, right? And the part of the podcast that we were talking about in the Trust Me podcast is when Megan was talking about how distorted she became as far as like eating disordered and anorexic and bulimic and all of these things from a magazine, right? And like looking at this magazine because she was getting images of what would be perfect, what would be perfect. She talked about not even living in herself. She's like, I wasn't even here for this. It was like, I was only thinking about when I'm this, when I'm this, when I'm perfect, when I'm perfect. But let me tell you something. This is like the crux I was thinking about when we were talking about this topic, because you'll look at religious cults, you'll look at all these ways that they will make you feel that you need to attain, this kind of perfection, which is impossible, right? But what actually happens is they make you feel the opposite way, right? Or they traumatize you and it comes out of nowhere and you're like dirty, or you did something that, because you're human, right? So if you even looked at a boy and you were in this fundamentalist group and you looked at a boy, you were like, that was like really dirty. And the girl will feel so much shame, and so much, she will be made to be, gaslit. And so there's this thing constantly with being like the perfection of like God and being like the reflection of God. However, I think it's like the exact same like thing in reverse, which is like imposter syndrome. Like, I think what we all do is like when we're in these groups or something, we're like, and we do this in our mind anyway, but we're like trying to be perfect, and we're trying to say like, in the future I'm going to be this, and I'm trying to achieve this, and we're always like looking for this state of perfection. But really, we're just actually walking around all the time feeling like we're not good enough, or we're not smart enough, or we're not like, we have like the imposter syndrome all the time of like, no, if God really knew how many dirty thoughts I actually had, or if like, like depending on whatever group you're in, whatever relationship, no one else would be with me. I'm just going to stay with this person. Like, we have this imposter syndrome about how horrible we are, all the while striving to be this like perfection. And it's like, can we just like crack out of all of that? Can we just like, first of all, just like they talked about in the podcast, and I brought this up so many times, like, I cannot stand anybody who looks like or seems normal. Like, I think it was Lola on the podcast who said, I feel uncomfortable. And I feel the same way. I feel uncomfortable because I am so not just like, I'm not just easy breezy, and I'm not just like, hey, cool. Like, this is what I'm just like, not ever going to be this like perfectly put together or perfectly spoken or whatever it is. Nor do I ever want to hang out with somebody like that. So like, what is it that we're trying to aspire to be? I think in the way that it comes out for me, one of the ways that I was like looking at things like purity or perfection and things that I struggle with. And it comes back to being a mom, which again, this is like what ruins our whole life, right?
Being a mom.
Yeah.
This is why I love you, because this is on the real here.
Listen, it's called Dirty Mind. So the thing is that like, okay, so when they were born and then they grew up, I don't know why, I think that in our society, we overkill health to the point that it makes people like really crazy. Okay. So California, we're on our way back there. Like, we're always like super like farmers market, and we want to eat organic, and like, but then there comes a point where it's like every time there's something that like they're eating in their mouth, like now there's so much about like, there's this and this, and there's this and this, and there's this and this. It's like, I would feel for so many years this like perpetual state of like stress and guilt because I shouldn't be letting them have that in their body. And I'm like watching them eat something and it'll stress me out so bad, like the candy at the party. It's not like I'm not going to let them. I'm just saying the part of it that was so dirty in my mind of how like I shouldn't let them have that. And then like trying to look at, I hope I'm explaining this correctly, but I try to look at it later and process this stuff. Because when I don't feel good, I don't want to stay there. So like, this is one of the great things about my mind is that it like auto processes, right? It goes, I don't feel good right now. Why? Let me like, what am I thinking? What is going on? And what I always come back to is that it's like, because we hear so much stuff that goes on and like how horrible the food is in my country, which it's true, it is. And how bad it is that they spray this, or what you're eating actually is this, if you eat tofu, or then it's like, there's this state of mind that I'm constantly in that it's like, I feel like we should be achieving some kind of perfection. And then when they eat anything at all, because everything is attributed to something that could be something like too much water is bad for you. Like, then I go into this like feeling guilty thing, and I'm just over it and I don't want to do it anymore. So I like, for a while, I just like have been really just trying to train myself, literally, like program myself to be like, watch them eat this. Like, you go give them this thing and like watch them eat it. And it's okay. It's fine. And there are things that like, it's good to be aware of, and it's great. You should eat what you want. But when it consumes you, it is so much more stress than the thing that you think that you're putting on them. That's so horrible. You're actually doing like 5 times worse in your own body, because people who have the anxiety, right, like will die 10 years earlier. So it's like, we're just
Guilt.
so
Guilt is more toxic than pesticides, is what you're saying.
Guilt is more, don't you think? Allegedly.
Allegedly, we're not doctors, and this comes with a disclaimer that we don't actually know what causes cancer. But if we had to guess, I would say guilt is going to do it faster than pesticide.
I think guilt is going to do it because our bodies are so adaptable, and they do adapt to whatever's like, you know, if they're having low levels of this or whatever it is. So it is guilt. It is. And that's why narcissists never die, because they don't feel guilt. I mean, this is my theory, because I know so many old, like, you know, people who I'm like, how did they live? Oh, because they have no remorse over anything. They don't feel bad because they were the victim of all of it. So,
but they had lots of chemically sprayed apples. So
they had so many chemically sprayed apples, and they're fine.
Our theory pans out.
Yeah. It's so crazy. So I want to address that, because I see this in our culture with the perfection of like being a mom. Hint, spoiler alert, you will fail. Because there is no perfect mom. And honestly, I not only fail, but like my new favorite thing is to just, because we've talked about failing before, but like just being so super honest with my kids and saying like, this is what I struggle with. And I'm so like uptight about this. And this is how I overwhelm, and like all the ways of just not being perfect. I just am owning them and loving it and being like, this is who I actually am. And there's no like pressure to change it. And when there's no pressure to change it, I actually don't even act in that stuff too much. I don't even have the anxiety, because I'm okay with, you know, with just not being perfect. And I feel this way too about, and I'm going to just be honest and vulnerable about, like, I suffered for so long not realizing how much I struggled with anxiety and depression and some other mental health things. I always thought the perfect way, I'm putting it in quotes, and the more pure way, right, is to do it and get through that with your own ways, because there's ways to do it through meditation, or there's ways to do it through this. And I can tell you, I really wasted a lot of years, and I'm not saying that with like regret. There was so much I learned from it, but I am telling you that if I had just gone on medication, which I have in the last year, then I cannot even tell you the magic it has done to like my brain, right? And my neurology. And I keep going back to thinking about girls who leave these fundamentalist polygamous groups, okay? They are grown in, and I've spoke about it before because I'm always talking about all the like deepest and darkest, right? Like little pockets of religions and things like that. But these girls are indoctrinated since they are young. They have absolutely no chance of, like, they are so pressured to be like, they're isolated. They're in the group. They can't talk to anybody else. They say if anybody else in the world is like, if you go out there, you're going to be assaulted and attacked, and like everybody's crazy and you will whatever. And they just have to be so pure and so good and so, you know, they can't even think bad thoughts about the leader or anything, or else that's the devil, right? So like, even if they have any critical thinking and they use it, they're already told it's demonic. So then they think they're demonic. But what every single one of them says when they get out, which I always follow the stories of women who get out, because they are the bravest, most amazing, courageous people you can possibly imagine. Because what they say every time is, I left because I knew it was going to be hell out there, but I would rather be in that hell because this hell was so much worse. And so what I keep saying about like taking something, a much smaller example is like taking medication, and some people can relate to this, is like, why am I pushing myself to do something so hard and I suffer every single day? Why am I not taking something for this ADHD I was diagnosed with? Why wouldn't I do that? Why would I want to live in this hell of suffering every single day, and I can't feel achievement and I can't feel whatever? I would rather take the suffering and die 10 years younger, if that's what synthetic medicine will do to me by taking this for this, like, for this time period of my life. I'd rather have the hell of dying earlier than literally living every single day where I have so much anxiety, I can not sleep through the night, or my heart will I'll go into a panic attack and have literally no idea why. And I have to figure out like what happened to, like, why. That is not conducive to a successful life. And so I just want to give people the understanding of, like, you know, understanding what we're trying to do when we're trying to get into these perfectionist modes, or trying to be the perfect mom, because the best mom will never let their kid, they will always eat something because I love them so much that they will only eat all the things that are amazing and then only be in this situation or have this friend. That's not real life. And you're not actually setting yourself up for, teaching your kids to make good decisions and like being like, hey, there were so many other things that I was doing so unperfectly by trying to be this perfect image of something. It's always, anytime you aspire to be anything perfect, you are in some kind of distortion, because the concept of perfect is impossible. You will never win it. That's why they use them in cults. That's why they use it in influencing. That's why they use it in narcissistic relationships, because you try and try and try to keep going back to whatever thing you got addicted to in there, feeling good, being love bombed, whatever it is, seeing yourself in a higher light, feeling superior for a moment. And then you are trying so hard to be that you actually are distorting and dirtying up so many other areas and perspectives and other, making other really big impacts and imprints on your own life.
So this was my question. Thanks for bringing it around, because why is it, do you think, that they really have this focus and obsession on purification or clearing? Obviously, it's not actually clearing. We know that it's spiritual bypass, it's dissociation, it's making you feel good temporarily, but it's not actually clearing because it's not a thing. Like, you don't ever purify and become clean and clear because you're freaking human being. So what is the actual reason that so many groups and cults are so obsessed with this?
Because they keep you in a state of always striving. And what they do is they tell you that the thing that you'll have when you are perfect, like when your vagina is clear and clean all the time, then you will have, what they do is, and I'm not kidding you, they give you a sense of like this image that is true euphoria. It's like the perfect, I'm putting that in quotes, right? The perfect example of like, I feel like Don Jr., by the way, like Donald Trump Jr. is like a maniac, and he literally just quotes and just goes like this, and he's like the left side, and like just quotes all the time. So, and I'm like always doing that. So
You're
if
so
anybody's
Don Jr.
listening to me,
Yeah.
I'm so Don Jr. Oh
Don
my
Jr.
gosh, why do I have to be him? But so what they do is they put you in this place of, okay, so perfection isn't real, but you believe it is, right? So you'll always strive because you think you can be. And the reason that you feel so sure that it's true is because the prophet told you that it's true, or the group leader told you it's true, or the boyfriend told you it's true. And they told you that you were at one time, or that when you achieve it, it's going to look like this. And man, you can live, and you know this. I know you know this because I know that this is what they do in this group, is that you can live a long time being fed off the possibility of what's going to happen in the future when you're bypassing every single fucking day of the now and the present. Okay. And they put people in that state because what actually happens is, in most of these groups, they will not let you take antidepressants. They will say things like depression isn't real, just like cults aren't really a thing. Depression's not real. Don't go to a mental health professional. Scientology will steer you completely away from a psychologist, right? And talking to anybody, because they are so scary. The reason they do that is because they need to keep you in a state of depression. Mm-hmm. If you were on antidepressants and you felt better, you would get out of there in like 5, 4, 3, you'd be out because it doesn't feel good. The thing is that you're so depressed, you don't have the will to keep to get out. And so what you do is you feed off of this image that they gave you. It's very calculated. It's all meant to be that way. And what they say is, you'll have this thing. The second coming of Christ is coming, and 144,000 people are going to be the ones who are saved. Are you part of that? Are you one of the chosen ones? Are you one who is in the most perfection and reflecting Christ? I'm not even making this up. These are real words that are said. We can guess, whoever's listening, like 10 points for whoever guesses which cult that's from. But do you see what I'm saying? If you are chosen to be, part of this group and whatever, and you're depressed, and your mind is already fragile and it's already manipulated since you were a baby, because unfortunately, like in a lot of these places, they do a lot of really harsh things to babies. If you things like the Duggars, right? You look at things like the Duggars, they're in the IBLP, which is like
an Institute in Basic Life Principles.
That's right. Okay, but they are like a pretty, yes, they're a pretty indoctrinated group. They do these practices. They are like, Gothard is the name of this guy. And they do these things where they you're conditioning babies. Like if they walk off, you put them on a like baby mat, right? That's tiny, like a little square. And if they move, you like hit them enough that they will never get off of that again. So what I'm saying is if you do things like that to a human being when they are just learning the safety, that they depend on the people around them to be safe, and that they could just come out of nowhere and like hit you or tell you your outfit's horrible and that you can lose your whole facilitator license, like these things are traumas. So what happens is it doesn't matter that you're a grown adult and something's happening. What matters is that if you've ever had something happen that's traumatic, which all of us have, then that trauma is opened up, like that wound is opened up at the same amount. Your body reacts in the same way it might have as a child, right? Trauma is trauma. So it's triggered, and it can be created, right? So it's these tactics, the way that they're used they are made so that most people will never be able to wrap their brain or mind around what's going on. And most of the ones who leave these groups feel so much shame, and they feel so horrible about themselves that they were like, you know what I mean? But really then later look at what the effects were and trauma was of the shunning, and what the trauma and effects were of the way that they were raised, and how it actually wasn't okay if they were, abused in some way, or they were, manipulated in some way, like that actually wasn't okay. And it's so hard for people to unravel that and be strong enough to even handle that kind of a understanding of what was happening in real life, that most people just stay in because they honestly can't get out. It's just it's like unsafe, right? For them to like their mind to even go there. Some people really do go have psychotic episodes because they just cannot, a lot of people leaving Scientology talk about a lot of them really, really breaking down and going completely mental, like really having voices, or, I mean, they have psychotic breaks because you're gaslit so hardcore until you say the thing that they want to say, that you actually just start believing that you did it. Do you know what I mean? Or did what they're saying you did. So the indoctrination's real, but what you're saying is how they get them to do it is because they keep them in a perpetual state of always striving. They're in a depressed state, and they keep them always striving for the future, because it's going to be utopia when Jesus comes back, and we're all going to be together, and he's only going to pick the most faithful. And are you that person? And so go through what you're going through today. And they go through the things that they have to go through every day, which are horrible. And then they later, are just saying they're doing it I'm doing it because of this, I'm doing it for this. So they can't really look at later that I did that for nothing. I accepted that for nothing. They can't do that. So they need to hold on to that utopia vision.
Well, that's the thing that broke everything for me, is when I did realize it was doing all of this for nothing. And then I was like, right, I'm getting out. But I think one thing to just tie it in a little bow there, if you're wondering why a group leader has done anything, here's one thing you can look at. How did that thing that they said or they did make them more money, give them more power, or allow them to have sex? Because these are the three things: money, power, and sex. And like, I've seen people try and like mind fuck themselves around, like, but why did he say this? And why did he do this? And I'm like, it's way more simple than you're making it. Either like having you around, like, for instance, let's say they kicked someone out. It's like, why did they kick them out? Well, would it cost them money to have them in, or take away some of their power? Or did they not have sex with them? I mean, it's always these three, like, let's just look at three things. So in order to make you constantly strive and feel like you have to purify and become more perfect, which you'll never, ever get to all the time, and keeping you in that state, obviously, if it's religions require you to pay them out of your, your tithing. If it's a self-help group, you're paying them in your, fees, and
always volunteering and taking all the time away from your own family, and
and you're paying in your time. A lot of these groups, once they bleed you dry of money, they start taking you your time. So then you're like basically volunteering in order to stay in, because you don't have any more money. You're paying in your time. And so it's keeping you in the system because it's making them money, is basically the point.
And also there is a sickness in it too. So like when I talk about fragile mind, I'm telling people to covet that shit like it is like, you know, the holy grail, okay? Like it is the most delicate thing. Your mind, do not hand it over. So what we do is have to have more conversations around people who are really like, we need to talk about narcissistic people. We need to understand that like Keith Raniere is a perfect example of a master at this, right? To get people to always be striving, it's not just that you can get them to do it to have the control. It's that they see when you come back to them after they like will love bomb you and then they'll gaslight you and say something horrible. If you come back and are like, I need your help because I think I'm getting through it and I understand what you said and I'm really sorry or something. There, you can see like an actual like flick in their eyes. It's like what I was talking about Lori Vallow in the, you know, the behavior channel of like this panel of like when she went up, like she knew she won. It's a game for them. They see, oh my gosh, I just got away with doing this to you. And you're back over here handing me the dictation and narration of the way that your mind is going to think. Oh, I'm going to have so much fun because these people don't have compassion for you and they don't want you better, even though they're saying that that's what the group's about. It has nothing to do with that. It's actually the opposite. And you're handing over your power. And the more they can do it, they just start having fun playing games. They get bored and they're like sick people. So they have to feel good about themselves. They don't have any actual real self-awareness and they don't have their own, you know, they're not satisfied with their own mental health. So they have to like step on other people and stand taller. So one of the things you can see is if you're caught in something that's like, I'm trying to be more perfect. This group is trying to get me to be more perfect, you know, and I'm striving for this ideal. Like, do you feel good now? Are you feeling good? Like, do you feel good about yourself in this moment? Or are you constantly trying to just be something, you know what I mean? Like, I just want people to stop for a minute and think about right now. Don't think about the future. Stop pulling yourself all the way into this other thing. It's not, hasn't happened. And we don't even know what's going to come around and how it's going to look, but it's not going to be like that magazine. I can promise you that. And it's not going to be like the thing that the person dangled in front of you. And, you know, because they spoke to God, they didn't. So if they're telling you, they can speak to God and tell them what they should do, but anybody who's telling you that they know what you should do because they talk to a higher power or that they have more consciousness, run like hell. Okay. Oh, and so Keith Raniere, that was the last point, is that just he was just a genius at being able to, it's a play. It's like a cat and mouse thing. They want to get the person who's hard to get. They want to like conquer the people who are hard to get. They want to get the Dalai Lama. They want to get the Mark Vincente. They want to get the Sarah Edmondson. They wanted us. They want beautiful, kind, very smart, you know, like people, because that's the best representation of what they're pretending to be, because they can't use themselves. You know what I mean?
No, they can. And that's who they can exploit as well.
Just question, just question that.